Hi, and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist video series. I am Phil Long, Precision Agronomy Advisor with Latham High-Tech Seeds. This week we're out in the field. It's fungicide timing in corn, so no better place to be than out where the pollen is definitely flying. So I want to start out with talking about development stages because it's so important to understanding what you're protecting when you're putting on a fungicide and how long you need to protect that corn plant. So if we take a look at what we're standing in right now, this corn, I did tear some of the leaves back, but I'm just going to pull an ear off here. You can see pretty easily we're not to brown silk yet, so we're at R1 silking. R1 is silking, so we got the tassel VT and then we got R1. Once we get to R1, it's going to spend about 5 to 10 days in R1 until we get to that brown silk. That's really the time frame when we typically target for a fungicide application, is that R1, tassel to R1 to brown silk time frame, and we're not quite to brown silk yet. So that's where we're at. It's going to spend, like I mentioned, about 5 to 10 days in this stage. Once we get to the blister or R2, it's going to spend about 5 to 10 days per stage until we get to R5, which is dent stage. So just think about that. We've got the progression from silking, and we get blister, milk, dough, and then dent at R5. It's going to spend about 30 days in R5. Overall, in reproduction, once we get to this point, R1, it spends about 60 days in reproduction. So that's your time frame you're looking at to protect that 30 days in R5. Once we get to that dent stage, a lot of times we think, oh, it's to dent, you know, it's almost done. It spends about 30-35 days in that stage, and there's still about 30 to 40% of the yield left. I always think about it in terms of, it's not a good way to think about it, but in terms of a hailstorm, how much yield loss would you see if you lost all the leaves? So at R5, if we stripped every leaf off the plant, we'd see about 30 to 40% yield loss. Now, once we get to half milk line in that ear, in that kernel, it's only about 5 to 10% yield loss. So, but that just gives you an idea how much is going on inside the corn plant during reproduction, all the way well past R5. So we always talk about making sure you're protecting that plant all season long. Now, as we're out scouting, a lot of times we typically start scouting about vegetative tassel and start really looking at the lower part of the plant to see if there's any diseases showing up down there, because we know if conditions are right, they're going to move, and they can potentially move quickly. If we get a lot of heavy dews and a lot of situations where we're looking at high humidity or things that move some of our diseases really quickly, key in on those diseases that you know, the particular hybrids you're growing. We'd list those in our product guide, which ones may be more or less susceptible to certain diseases out in the fields. Those are the ones you want to key in on and make sure that you're protecting that hybrid from that particular disease. So if you see something like northern corn leaf blight or gray leaf spot showing up and that particular hybrid is not as strong in those categories, those are the ones you want to key in on your fungicide application. So we look at the lower part of the plant. In this case, I'm not seeing a lot of disease in the canopy at any point, really, where we're at right here. I can just pull this ear leaf off here on this particular plant, and it's honestly very clean. Even below that is very clean. So the whole canopy, to me, there's very little disease on it. This would be a case where we'd come back in another week and make sure that it's still looking like this. So it's important to understand that what we're trying to protect is the top part of the plant, but we look at the whole plant in terms of disease progression. That's really important. But just to key in on how things are development-wise, how this corn plant develops, when we look at the ear leaf and above, that's roughly 75 to 90% of the carbohydrates coming from those leaves are going to be filling this ear. So 75 to 90% of that comes from the upper part of the canopy, from the ear leaf and above. That's why we talk so much about how important it is to protect that ear leaf and the upper canopy, because all those carbohydrates come down and fill out that particular ear. The lower canopy is important, but mainly in terms of disease progression, we just want to make sure that it's not going to get to covering that ear leaf and above while we're still trying to fill that ear. So I just mentioned it spends about 60 days. We have about 60 days to protect. Obviously, this is the key critical time period, but we still need to protect that whole time, and how much accumulation happens even after R5, like I just mentioned. So a lot of things to think about when you're out scouting. Just make sure that you're scouting on a regular weekly basis so that you see any of that progression, and key in on if you're getting situations or environmental conditions that may be really inviting more disease or inviting it to spread. So A lot of things to think about, but as you're out and about in the cornfields, make sure you're taking a look at the whole canopy and protecting that corn plant till we get to that black layer of physiological maturity. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at 1-877-GO-LATHAM or visit us on our website at lathamseeds.com. As always, thanks for watching this week's Ask the Agronomist.